Allison Holder, welcome to the Visionary Life podcast. You are technically our first guest that we're recording with for this season of our Bracebridge Entrepreneurs Spotlight. So I want to give you a really big welcome. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks, Kelsey. I'm so happy to be here. This is awesome.
I love it. So let's kick off just with some fun rapid fire questions because I'm sure everybody wants to get to know you a little bit better before we dive into your story. So first thing, could you tell us where you grew up and where you live now?
Awesome. Yeah. So I actually grew up in Muskoka, born and raised here. I used to live in a small community called Barkway outside of Gravenhurst, which some people might know. And yeah, then I moved away for school for a while, and now I'm back living in Bracebridge. Yeah.
Awesome. Love it. What is lighting you up right now? Like, I know we're recording this on like month 14 of lockdown here in Ontario. So I'd love to hear like what's bringing you joy these days?
Right? It's like we all really need to look for it right now, I think. It's been a long go. I'd say the biggest things right now is that I just moved into a newly built house with my partner,
Wow.
which is incredible. We are so lucky that we were able to do that amidst a pandemic. And so what lights me up right now is just like piecing together our new life, whether it's like unpacking a box we haven't looked at in 2 years, or like finally getting to some landscaping, like doing my own gardening at my own house, which is just so weird to even say. So yeah, just like all those
So
little
fun.
things about establishing a life. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to explore when you get a home, I'm sure. Like finally everything is yours to take care of and you take this like
Yes,
special kind of pride in it, I'm sure.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
So cool. Did you always know you wanted to start your own business?
Not even a little bit. I didn't think I wanted to be an entrepreneur, honestly,
Yeah.
interestingly enough. I grew up with parents who had their own business. They ran a plumbing business in Muskoka for over 20 years. And I saw like how good and how hard it could be for them. And I just really didn't think that it was the life for me. But then after doing quite a bit of university, an undergrad and a master's, and really struggling to um, find employment in my field, I kind of just fell into it because I was pursuing a passion project that often is the way turns into a much larger thing and a much more full-time thing. So it was kind of like a happy accident, I would say.
That's so cool and very neat to see that you kind of stumbled into it because I know that a lot of our listeners, they did kind of follow the traditional schooling model of like doing college or university. Some of them may have gone on to have like get a master's degree and then they still couldn't really find a job that they loved.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so a lot of them are at this crux in their life where it's like, oh, well, maybe I could start my own thing instead of, staying in the field where there isn't a lot of work. So it's kind of fun that you stumbled on it. And you said that, you had kind of watched your parents go through this. So you had
Yeah.
an idea that it is possible, even though you said it was good and hard for them.
Yeah, you see like how much time you have to put into it in order
Yeah.
to be successful, and like you do have to make sacrifices, and like being a seasonal business,
Yeah.
like Muskoka just generally is seasonal regardless, I think, of what industry you're working in. Pretty much everybody gets a lot busier during the summer months.
Yeah.
So you have to give up a lot of your time in like the most beautiful parts of the year where the weather's great and you could be, on a dock somewhere, but you
Yep.
really can't be usually.
Yep.
So yeah, you have to be prepared, I think, for that sacrifice. So yeah,
I'm
hence my
curious,
yeah.
what did you do your undergrad and master's in?
Fair, yeah. So my undergrad was at Dalhousie University in Halifax. So I was out there for 6 years. And I did the undergrad in a double major in international development studies and social anthropology. So like I fresh faced out of high school, like really wanted to get out of Muskoka and like experience something different. And I had very much like I'm going to take on the world and save the world and fix all the world's problems. Oh, so naive. So altruistic, honestly.
Came from a good
I,
place.
I, I appreciate young Allison's optimism, but yeah, so basically I had the idea that I would either like go on to like law school or work for a nonprofit, something along those lines. And then I moved back and did a master's at Ryerson in immigration and settlement studies. So basically, it's like social work for immigrants and refugees. And so I did it right in the peak of the Syrian refugee crisis, is when I was studying it at Ryerson. So it was super timely and really interesting, but it's such a niche that there just aren't a lot of jobs in the field, and you usually have to be able to speak like Arabic or another language outside of just being like bilingual, like with French. So it made it really difficult to get a job. So yeah, while I was doing the master's, I was also kind of just starting to peruse flowers and do some flowers for just friends and family. And then that's where things started kind of rolling. Yeah.
So looking back, like I always think like there's got to be some lessons learned in that time spent in your undergrad and masters that you now bring into being an entrepreneur. Do you see any synergies? Like, do you feel like it was a total waste of time, or can you look at that chapter of your life and go, yeah, I did learn some valuable skills that have set me up to become a good business owner?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is that I had to have time away from Muskoka in order to want to come back and settle here. Like I needed that space in order to be able to appreciate like the magic of this place. And with that space, I was able to see things differently and know that it is special and that it is a really nice place that's peaceful and there's lots of opportunity and there's lots of great people. And so just being able to see Muskoka with a different pair of glasses, like really, like I would say going away really lent itself to that. And also specifically my master's was super challenging and I had to write a thesis. So just like taking on a project like that, and doing research and having to write an incredibly long paper, basically like a kind of like a novel, took like a kind of focus and determination. And it's like it's a long term project. Like you can't just like sit down and like frantically write an essay the night before it's due. Like the thesis takes time. So being able to like go through that process and like the ups and downs of it showed me that I have more strength and more organizational skills and just like more determination than I probably thought I ever did. So although I like don't really use the specifics of what I learned in my degrees, like applying them to everyday life, I still feel like what I got out of it was just like priceless, and I wouldn't change them whatsoever. And I think, and I thankfully do also have a second job outside of the business because I do try and stay connected to what I studied. So in some way, so I do work for the YWCA Muskoka as well and do some youth programs part-time for them. So I still do get to do like a little bit of like social work, social programs, which makes it seem like all that I studied wasn't like a complete waste, which is really nice too.
I love that. And it's so great to hear that like you are able to be multi-passionate and like, you know, help at the YWCA and also be a business owner. It's not that it needs to be a mutually exclusive, like start your business and stop everything else. It's like, no, if you have various passions, find ways to do them all in a week. That's kind of like the direction that our world is moving to, that there is less like full-time work. And a lot of people are working like 2, maybe 3 jobs, maybe one's a side hustle and one's their full-time gig. And it's just nice to hear that, you know, you have found some sort of balance and are utilizing your skills and also able to exercise your passion. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that.
You.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Floral Designs by Allison? So who do you help and what do you offer?
Fair, yeah. So I founded it in 2017 officially, but yeah, we're going into year 4 now of the business. Um, Basically, I began the business wanting to do solely large events and weddings. That was going to be the main focus. And that's, I'd say, for like my first year and a half, that really was what I was doing. Um, and then COVID happened and we had a pandemic and we all, if I know that nobody wants to hear the word pivot ever again or see the meme of Ross yelling in the hallway, yelling about the couch pivoting, but
I love
but
it.
I really did have to pivot because they're just, what was going to be a very busy full season in 2020 for weddings,
Yeah.
like just was decimated. And that's the case for pretty much everybody who works in the wedding and event industry. Don't get me wrong, there still were small weddings and elopements and things, but it's just not the same as bigger stuff. So when it came to the pandemic starting, I had a bit of a shift in the business and I got much more into everyday arrangements and being able to offer those to people. As well as I really expanded upon my dried flower selection because those are really popular right now and people are pretty into them. So I also created like an online store with dried flowers that people can buy. And yeah, like if you told me a year ago that this is where I would be right now, I would not have believed you because it's just like not really what I set out to be doing with the business. And I didn't really think everyday orders were my thing, but they have been kind of like the survival in the last year. So I guess if you're asking who I serve, the range is huge. It
Yeah.
can go from brides and grooms and couples all the way to like I have a 75-year-old lady who gets a bouquet from me every 2 weeks because she loves having fresh flowers in the house and like it's something that she looks forward to. And like so for the last year I've delivered her a bouquet every 2 weeks to her
So
house in
cute.
Gravenhurst. So
Oh,
like
love that.
the range is huge. So
Absolutely. And
yeah.
I think for all of us, like the name of our business is change and evolution. And,
Yeah.
as we grow as entrepreneurs and as we start to understand our customers better and as the world continues to change, right? Our world is so complex
Mm-hmm.
and COVID is just
Mm-hmm.
one layer that we had to add on top of running a business. And it's like, oh yeah, this is never going to stop happening. So I love that you have this mindset of, okay, like this happened. What can I do instead of these really large weddings or really large gatherings? And you found a way to still offer your expertise, but in more like bite-sized ways, right? With the daily floral arrangements and with the dried flowers. And you said like you had to start your online shop. Did you start it because of COVID?
Totally, yeah. I
Yeah.
never would have had an online shop otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of like figured out how to do that and built
Mm-hmm.
it into my website. And yeah, it's
Yep.
been a big learning curve. Because yeah, I
Yes.
didn't really see myself getting into more of a retail setting. Like I still work from a home studio. I don't
Yep.
have a storefront. I just have a home studio in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So online store is like the way to go.
Yeah.
And yeah, it works pretty well for me. I'm pretty grateful. Yeah.
Yeah, I always think about how like storefronts are no longer necessary per se because now
Mm-hmm.
we have these platforms like Instagram that act as a storefront or a website that acts as a storefront or even like email marketing. It's kind of like the store popping up in somebody's inbox. So
Yep. Yep.
it's nice that it is totally possible right now to run a business without investing in a brick and mortar space. And for you to be able to do it out of a home studio is quite the blessing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm super lucky. Yeah, it works
Mhm.
really nicely for my lifestyle, and I also do my programs for the YWCA from home
Yep.
as well because they're all virtual. So
Hmm.
yeah, both a home office and a home studio, which is really cool. Yeah.
So in business, I don't know if you ever wrote a formal business plan or not, but they always ask you like what your unique selling proposition is. But, you know, in easier terms, and I know our listeners are always curious, like how to set their business apart. I'm curious, what makes Floral Designs by Allison unique when you compare it to your competitors or to others in your industry? What makes you different?
That's a great question. I would say it's kind of like I have 2 points that I could use to answer that question. The first thing is that every single thing I make, and this probably sounds cheesy, but I truly put a piece of myself into everything that I make. I'm not like I'm the only person who works for the business,
Mhm.
and I do the vast majority of all of the work. Every once in a while, I have like freelance help if I have a big event, but it's
Yeah.
pretty much just me like running the show.
Mhm.
And so I never send something out the door that I personally wouldn't want to receive myself. Like
Yeah.
if I don't feel comfortable with what's going out the door, if it doesn't reflect me and like my style and my vision and the quality that I stand behind, then I won't send it out. And I'm like super picky. So I'd say the biggest thing would be giving a piece of myself with everything that I do. Um, and also just I've always based the business in kindness. I think that flowers are like a really important um, conveyor belt almost for sending out like love and emotion, and condolences, and celebration.
Yeah.
And I don't take it lightly that people like ask me to commemorate things on their behalf. Like I find it to be like such an honor, honestly. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of pulling from my social anthropology undergrad. It's like there's a really big human element to flowers that I think that not everybody really recognizes or puts the love into them.
Mm.
But it really is a big honor. So I've always set out to be very kind and approachable and friendly and personable. And from that, I create like really strong relationships with my different clients. And I always give so much with whatever I'm making for them to represent whatever it is that they need and ask me to do for them. So
Mhm.
that has been like since day one, I've been that way. If that makes sense. That was a bit of a
No, I mean, it
yeah.
makes total sense. Like I devote a lot of my spare time researching like how people build remarkable client services business. Like
Mm,
what are the secrets to having those long-lasting relationships and getting referrals and having word of
mm-hmm.
mouth work in your favor? And honestly, it always boils down to the relationship that you build with that client. It's
Yeah.
exactly what you said. It's treating them with kindness rather than with power or force. It's
Yeah.
you know, like you said, the level of detail that you make sure goes out in every order. It's that care that you provide. And that is enough to run a successful business a lot of the time. People think, oh, I have to have these fancy marketing efforts and set up expensive Facebook ads, but they kind of ignore the customer all the while. And
Yeah.
they
Exactly.
don't
Yeah.
even like think about the experience that they're providing or like what the unboxing is like or what those
Mm-hmm.
email exchanges are like. And it's like, no, like you need to be a remarkable service provider first. And then the
Yeah.
marketing kind of happens for you. Yes, there's more you can do, but I
Mm-hmm.
think like those are the perfect unique differentiators for you because not everybody is doing them. It seems obvious, but it's not common sense for a lot of business owners. So I think that's absolutely awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've honestly never ever ran an ad ever.
Yeah.
Like I've never paid for marketing. Like I obviously pay to have a website. Like
Yeah.
that's just like a monthly hosting fee. But
Hmm.
yeah, I have always I built a business off word of mouth. Thankfully, I had some people in my age range who were getting married when I first started out, and they put their confidence in me,
Yeah.
pretty blindly, to be honest. to do their wedding flowers. And then it all just went from there. And it's always been referrals and word of mouth. And I just find a lot of people on Instagram. That's truly where I've built most of my clientele and where most people have found me. And just like usually just naturally so, or through other people sharing what I'm up to. So yeah, it's been quite organic, which is really special.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of marketing strategy that we all want in place, right? It's mostly referrals and yes, using tools like your website and your Instagram to kind of fill the gaps and to maintain that consistent presence. So that's really cool. I'm curious, is there a skill set or a piece of advice that you know now, but you didn't know 4 years ago when you started your business? Just, yeah, something that you wish you knew then that you know now.
Yeah, I guess, and my parents had told me this too, with me going into the business is, two things actually. First one is knowing your worth. Even when I was starting out, just because you're new at something doesn't mean that your services aren't worth something. And that's really hard to wrap your head around. And I definitely did quite a lot of things where I made little to no money during the beginnings of the business, because you just really want to get your work out there. You want to show people what you can do. You want to build some trust, and establish a portfolio is especially really important for something like a flower business. So yeah. But just because you're getting started in something doesn't mean that you shouldn't be compensated for your time and your materials and your efforts and your passion. The first little while was hard because it really depletes you when you're like putting out a lot and you're not getting much back. So if I could redo things, I would probably just have a better sense of my worth from the start. And also, if you're not charging enough from the beginning for your services, then you kind of set a standard as to what your prices are going to be. And those prices might not be realistic for what things actually cost and how much time it takes you to actually do something. So if you're building a customer base, and what you're charging isn't actually realistic for the longevity of your business, then you're going to run into problems. And so I've had to, do some reconfiguring of prices and figure out what works best for me. And you sometimes have to have hard conversations with people who have been with you since day one and just kind of explain why things are going to cost what they do. So I guess that kind of comes from me just like falling into specifically everyday orders. It's everyday orders are like a whole other ballgame from weddings. So that was a huge learning curve as well. So yeah, knowing your worth would be the biggest one for me.
Yeah, it's such an important concept to think about because, there's one way to set prices when you start your business, which is to just look at what everybody else is doing and then to think, well, maybe I should undercut and just be the cheapest, for example.
Right.
And
Yes.
if I'm the cheapest, then everybody will come to me. But when you look at the value that you provide versus maybe some others in the industry, if you think that you add more value because of the relationship, because of the quality you provide, because of the whole experience from start to finish, then that's valued at more than the lowest price, right? So you really have to have that conversation of like, what do you feel this is worth based on your time, your energy, your expertise? What is the true value of this product or service rather than just what's the price tag of, just what everybody else is charging for it? And I think a lot of it, I don't know if you would agree with this, but it kind of boils down to mindset too. Like you have to believe in your product enough to put that price tag.
Biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes people don't believe in they're like, you know what, this is not worth more than $50. So I have to start with 50.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's really hard when you're first starting out to I'm putting air quotes around this, but to sell yourself, to know that something that you're doing and creating is something that other people would want to purchase. That's a really tricky concept to wrap your head around when you've never done that before. And like you have to have a strong sense of self-worth and confidence in order for you to feel like you can demand a certain price for what it is that you're making or selling. And I honestly, I still struggle with that sometimes. And if I'm not feeling particularly like creative or great about myself on a certain day, then it's really difficult sometimes for me to create something and say that and ask somebody else to pay for that. So I completely understand where you're coming from. And mindset is huge. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's why, like, one time I heard a quote that basically says, like, the more you grow as an individual, the more your business grows. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it boils down to that because, like, if I don't have self-worth and if I don't have confidence, then I'm not going to be growing my business in the way that I could because I'm going to be charging shit prices. I'm not going to feel good about
Yep.
what I'm offering my clients. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, I have to work on myself, work on my belief, my confidence, my mindset so that I can, charge what I am worth and
Mm-hmm.
really show up in my business the way I want to show up. So it's funny how it's really all interconnected.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think especially when you're an entrepreneur, your business is deeply integrated into your life. It's not the same as being able to like go to a 9 to 5 job, which I've done lots of,
Mm-hmm.
and then coming home and shutting it off. Like the business is just kind of always around, always in your head.
Yeah.
And like when you're going into being an entrepreneur, I think you have to be aware of the fact that in order to be successful, like you really have to give a lot of yourself into what you're doing. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have some boundaries and be able to disconnect when you need, but it's just like deeply a part of you when you are an entrepreneur, and it's such a small business, and it's like you're the face of it, and you're the one talking to everybody, and you're doing the deliveries, whatever it might be. Like
Yeah.
it's so a part of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And being that you are your business, like they're so interconnected, you mentioned the word boundaries. So I'm curious, do you have
Mm.
any boundaries or structures that help you to find balance as an entrepreneur?
It's really hard. I'm not going to lie. I wish I could say that, yeah, I just like wake up at 7:30 every day, and then I start working at 9, and then I'm just blah, blah, blah. No, not at
No,
all.
no way.
And like I know from talking to a bunch of other entrepreneurs, like specifically in the Muskoka area, like it's really hard to grow and be successful if you're not dedicating a lot of time to your business.
Yeah.
I definitely make the effort to shut down in the evenings and not look at my phone after a certain time, and like have time with my wife and like
Yep.
be present and like hang out with our doggies and whatever it
Mm-hmm.
might be, or like take a walk in the middle of the day for an hour and like leave the phone at home. Yeah, but I struggle with balance all of the time. And it's a conversation that my wife and I have often. And I think it's going to be like a journey throughout my time having a small business is being able to find that. So, I really don't have like a golden nugget of, of advice to give anybody, unfortunately.
Yeah. I
Other
mean, you're
than,
going through
yeah,
it, right? Like you're
totally. I'm
learning
going
in
through
the
it. Yeah.
process. And I think
Yeah.
that, for me, I'm still in it too. Like 5 years into
Mm-hmm.
business, I'm still trying to figure out how to have balance and to not let work consume me and let it wake me up
Mm-hmm.
at 4:30 a.m. when I should just be
Mm-hmm.
sleeping and, enjoying some downtime. And I don't know that there is a magic formula except for going through it and kind of hitting
Yep.
those moments where you're like, oh, I don't want to be like this. And having those tough conversations with your partner, them saying like, you are so disconnected, like
Yeah.
come back
Exactly.
home
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
some time. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think, it's figuring it out in the process. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough. I don't have the best advice either because I do skew sometimes to workaholic, but then there are
Mm-hmm.
times when, sometimes I am able to disconnect. I just haven't quite figured out the magic formula to keep that
Yeah.
balance completely consistent every day of my life.
Totally. Absolutely. I think, yeah, you start to see growth and it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's really invigorating and you want to like ride that wave and
Hmm.
stay on the surfboard basically.
Yeah.
And so there becomes like this anxiety uh, and worry that if you don't keep on top of it and you don't stay as dedicated, then all of it could go away just as quickly as it appeared. And it takes a lot of work, I think, to come to the realization that 4 or 5 years into a business, you've probably built a fairly decent clientele. People, appreciate what it is that you're doing, and they will be understanding and supportive and continue to come back.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that's always the case. Like, there's always going to be people who like jump from provider to provider.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how it works.
Totally.
But being at peace with knowing that you can like take a moment to step back sometimes. Some days I'm great at it, and won't look at the inbox, and other days I'm just like frantically trying to stay
Yeah.
on top of things. And yeah, you're laying in bed at night, scrolling in your head through the to-do list and the people you need to get back to. And it's tricky, yeah. And bringing in like self-care and like looking after your own mental health is like a whole other layer.
Hmm.
And it's cyclical. Like, you can't, if you're selling yourself and your service, but you're not like looking after yourself or your mental health, then it's, as we were just talking about, like, it's
Yeah.
just something's going to crash and burn. So either you're going to really take a beating personally in your
Yeah.
body and your mind, or the business will suffer.
Hmm.
And I see a lot of different people who go through that roller coaster when they're trying to do entrepreneurship. I think it's a really common problem, because if you wanted to, you could work all the time if you really wanted to. So.
Yeah, I think it's such an important conversation because like for a while, maybe 2 years ago, I was just like totally overrun with work, completely
Mm-hmm.
imbalanced, but I felt like I wasn't talking to anyone about it. And because
Mm-hmm.
none of my friends were entrepreneurs and my husband is not either, I just felt
Yep.
like nobody gets me. And I had to
Mm-hmm.
find an outlet, like a place to have these conversations to feel less alone and to realize that
Mm-hmm.
this is a common struggle of people who start
Yeah.
businesses. So my question to you out of that is like, do you have like somewhere to turn when these things are plaguing you? Like, is it with your wife that you have these conversations? Do you have a group of business owners? Where do you talk about challenges like balance as a
Mm.
business owner?
Yeah, I'm lucky. There are quite a few different people that I can talk to. Yeah, my wife is definitely a huge sounding board for me. Before moving up here, she owned a very busy small business in Toronto.
Mm,
So she has a lot of experience,
awesome.
and she can lend a lot of insight because she like literally lived it herself, and she can kind of from the outsider perspective see what I'm going through and know what I'm feeling and thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my parents are a huge help. Their business was significantly different from mine, but it was still a small business. The
Yeah.
trades are a different ball game though. So they definitely do lend insight though when I need it. And there is a really strong group of really capable, awesome women in Muskoka who run businesses, and we chat often. We work together on weddings often. I don't think that without them we would have been able to get through the pandemic, and like ride this COVID wave without like their support, and understanding, because it's been quite difficult for everybody. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of supports, which I'm very, very grateful for. And you have to like continue to exercise those supports and like reach out when you do need to talk or get advice, because you feel so much better, just like you said, when you don't feel alone in what you're dealing with. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love hearing that you do kind of have like that community of women business owners in the Muskoka
Mm-hmm.
area. And I know something that you're quite passionate about is kind of fostering that camaraderie over competition. Like it would be easy to look at these other female business owners and be like, well, I'm not going to share my secrets with them. And, oh, that person is like slightly competitive with me, but like,
Mm-hmm.
when does that mentality ever serve anyone? Right. So I'm curious, like, can you tell us how you've adopted this kind of abundant mindset that it is more valuable to focus on community over competition? Because I don't think that comes naturally to everybody.
I don't think it definitely doesn't come naturally. I think part of it comes from probably my education, and like being like setting roots in community, creating change, and being like together is always more successful than trying to be competitive or work individually. So that's probably where that is rooted. Um, Overall, Bracebridge is a small town. It's a very small town, and there are a lot of talented people here. Whether it's other like female business owners or other florists, there are tons of them. Like, especially, I'd say probably just off the top of my head, there's 6 or 7 florists just in Bracebridge who do the same kinds of things that I do. Like, and that's a lot of competition for a small area, and that doesn't include other parts of Muskoka where there are other florists as well. I just pride myself in knowing that I have good relationships with all of those people. I make an effort to be friendly with and get to know all of the other florists in the area. I I'm open with them about like what flowers are like right now. Like, are you having quality issues? Like, are you dealing with shortages? Like, how are things going for you? Have things been busy? Like, I just like to know how people are doing and create like a safe space for all of us to be able to lean on each other because I don't unless you're like in the wedding and event industry, specifically as a florist, I don't think people know how difficult it can be sometimes because you're dealing with a product that is highly perishable, is like very unpredictable. You order one thing and get another, or you just don't get it at all.
Good times.
Yeah, good times. Yeah, it's not like in a typical retail setting where like you order something in and then you just get exactly that item and then you sell it. And the prices like fluctuate like crazy, like even from week to week. It's hard to predict what prices are going to be on flowers. So it can be like very stressful and volatile sometimes. So I wouldn't ever want anybody to feel like they have to go that alone. So I have close relationships with a lot of different florists in the area. And I tried to create a sense of camaraderie because there is enough business for everybody. There are tons and tons of weddings, especially when people can have normal weddings. Then, the amount of business is pretty crazy in Muskoka during the wedding season. And we just went through Mother's Day, and I know that all of the florists in the area sold out. It was absolutely nuts. It was so busy. So being able to recommend other businesses when you're not able to do something and have confidence in your referral, for example, knowing that I can be like, yeah, call my friend Jess from Hugo Bloom. She's fantastic, and like she'll do a great job for you. I'm sorry I can't help you this time. Like just those simple things make a big difference. And I think it's when there's like a coalition of small businesses that are all aware of what each other are doing and who support each other, it actually presents to the public as a much more united, cohesive front where it doesn't seem like a bunch of different businesses are all trying to do the same thing and compete against each other. And everybody can offer their unique niche thing that they do. Like I would say that I am one of the florists who use a lot of like dried elements, for example, in what I'm doing. And I'm the one who has like a dried online store. and there's other florists who do other specific things that are unique to them, that they're really, really good at. And so it gets messy and difficult and creates animosity when you're not talking to each other and you're not supporting each other, and you're just constantly trying to like keep up, and offer what the other person is offering, or offering it for like $5 less, like, you know, when things like that just are yucky, and it's really unnecessary, and especially in a small town where referrals are everything, and you run into people. Like, I think it's really important to always just be kind, which is basically what I've rooted everything that I do in, is just approaching things with kindness and treating other people how you would want to be treated, basically.
Yeah. And I think that the industry gets better as a whole when you are friends with your competition. Like, I use competition with quotes because, like, I don't like to use that word either, because it's like, you're my peer. You are, a supporter of me, a colleague. Exactly. And like you said, there's enough to go around. You all have your unique thing that you do. And, rather than sitting back and just like watching from afar, like, what are they doing? Go say hi to them, be friends with them. And I know that's intimidating for a lot of people, but your business will only get better because of it. So I would highly suggest, befriend your industry peers, because there's, only good things that can come out of that.
Yeah. And you waste a ton of energy if you sit on Instagram, for example, scrolling through and comparing your work to other people's work, or like judging people for what they're doing. It's just a complete waste of energy that you could be putting either into like doing some self-care, or doing something more for your business. Like, it's just like, there's so many other ways to be using that energy, and negativity doesn't really serve anybody. And I truly believe in like, what you put out into get back. And throughout the process of owning a business, I've really experienced that come full circle. And whether it's like having wonderful clients, or if it's being able to like call one of my florist friends when I'm in a pickle and I am was shorted something, and I like really need this certain bloom or this certain color. It's like, can you help me out? And just like being able to know that they'll be there, and they'll support you, just like create such a sense of ease. And like, I can't stress enough like how much nicer your life is if you're just approaching things with that kind of mindset, and just being all about camaraderie. It truly will shift how you approach business, I think, honestly.
Yeah, you said it best when you said, like, it just takes too much mental energy to be scrolling and comparing and to be judging. Like, you don't have time for that. You have a business to run, and you got to keep your mindset just like in a positive way, like knowing that what you have is wonderfully different and what they have is also great. So yeah, I think it's an important conversation. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So now I want to shift gears a little bit into some Bracebridge specific questions. So I'd love to know, why do you love Bracebridge? What is so special about this little town that you've chosen as home?
Yeah, well, Bracebridge is considered, like, it's called the heart of Muskoka. And I really do believe that. I think it's a fitting slogan.
Yeah.
Apart from it being just like the cutest little town, I think it's truly adorable. Like, there's a reason that Hallmark movies are filmed in Bracebridge. I think that there really is a sense of togetherness and community in Bracebridge. It's been trickier given that we haven't been able to do a lot of community events in the last year to 14 months. I know that everybody's craving that. But there is a kind of a vein of kindness and togetherness that runs through Bracebridge that I think really aligns with how I approach life and how I like to treat other people. So it's also a place where I am lucky to like live with my wife and feel overall pretty like safe and happy with being like out as a member of the LGBTQ community. Like that's not the case for all kinds of small towns in Ontario where it wouldn't be as easy. But overall, Bracebridge is a very accepting and open place. And yeah, I feel very grateful that we can build a life here and not worry about constantly being like judged or being unsafe. So that is a really big contributing factor too. Like Muskoka Pride is based in Bracebridge, and they put on like a really lovely Pride celebration every year. So yeah, it's neat that way. And I think that there's a lot of really cool, unique people who live here. There's like all walks of life and all different socioeconomic statuses and all different stories and places of origin. And I just find it to be a much more interesting place than people might give it credit for at surface value, honestly. And whether it's like someone who comes here just seasonally at their cottage, or there's been a lot of new people that have moved here from the city during COVID. So we have like a whole new population now, which has created like a whole different kind of diversity, which I really, really appreciate. Yeah, I think that Bracebridge is just like a really interesting little place. And I love our downtown. I think it's so cute. And we have a really lovely range of businesses and things to offer. Yeah, it's if you could like create a little like postcard of like a small town experience, I think that Bracebridge would be a great depiction, truly. Yeah.
Did they pay you to say all of that? You really sold us. Like, I think we're all gonna move to Bracebridge now. It has everything.
There's water. There's good food.
Honestly, you did a really good job. I was like, yes.
Ooh. Oh my gosh. You know, and I'm someone who's now lived in Halifax and in Toronto. And I appreciate, excuse me, the benefits of living in a city and like the different experiences and opportunities and diversity that come with being in a city. But Bracebridge just continues to grow, and you can access so many of the same things that you can in a city, just on a smaller scale here, which is really lovely. My wife, prior to this, had never lived in the Muskoka area. She like grew up in Brampton and then lived in Toronto. So like moving up here was a big change.
No kidding.
Yeah. But like just knowing that she was able to settle in here and find happiness in a community, I think speaks wonders and volumes to what Bracebridge can offer people. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm curious, besides befriending the competition as a business owner, do you have any other advice for somebody who is growing a business in a small town? Like anything that you would offer as a success tip, we'll call it?
Yeah, I guess just the main thing is that I try and put a great deal of care into every interaction I have with everybody. Don't get me wrong, sometimes things don't go well, or you don't have a good interaction with somebody. Like that just happens. That's life.
Of course.
Or somebody might not be 100% happy with something that you do. Like that's just how it works. But for the most part, I try to put a great deal of care into everything that I do, and the customer experience process, because word of mouth is so big here, and people talk, and I get emails from people asking for things because they've seen my flowers at a friend's house, or they attended a wedding where I did the flowers, for example, or somebody recommended me, and so I would say just like putting care and being conscious of everything that you do and how it will have a ripple effect, much more so probably than if you were starting a business in a city setting, where I think it's easier to kind of hide or always find different clients because there's just a lot more people. Yeah, it's very different when you're trying to start a business in a small town setting. So I think that would be my biggest piece. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. Like thinking that, the ripple effect happens, word travels fast, making sure
Hmm.
that to the best of your ability, that every interaction is, something you put thought and time and energy into and making it
Yeah.
as great as possible. And of course, we all have bad days, we slip up, but
Yeah.
it's in
Yeah.
what you do in the 90% that really counts. So,
Yeah,
very good
yeah. And I'd
advice.
say the other thing that just popped into my head is just, and I struggle with this, but you have to be kind to yourself. Like,
Yep.
it can be really hard sometimes running a business, and
Hmm.
you can feel like the weight of the world on your shoulders over something might seem really simple as it from an outside perspective. It's like, oh, Allison, all you do is sell flowers. Like, what's the big deal? But like to me, it's like something so much bigger than that. Especially when you put so much of your sense of like self-worth and your care and love into what you're doing. So you just have to give yourself some grace. I would say is like learning grace is such a huge thing, and knowing that sometimes you're going to make mistakes or things aren't going to go as you planned, or a day you might set out with the best of intentions and multiple things might end up going wrong, and that's okay. Like you will get through it, you will survive.
Hmm.
um, but just like giving yourself the space to mess up, and just learning from it, but being okay with it, I would say would be a big piece that I still work on. And
Yep.
just not beating myself up over things is, is sometimes really hard but necessary to
Absolutely.
learn. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that word of just grace. Like give yourself
Grace. Yeah.
grace.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
simple and it's like something we need to be reminded of more often than not. So
Seriously.
that's
Yeah.
great. Allison, this has been so fun. Now I just want to ask, like, where can we connect with you? Where can we learn more about your work, get
Mm.
in touch with you, plug anything that would be relevant to our listener?
Fair. Yeah. I would say the place that I engage with the most is my Instagram, which is Floral Design by Allison. Unfortunately, somebody took Floral Designs with an S, and to
No.
this day, it grates me. I'm not. I'm just a little bitter.
Have you messaged them to be like, can I have
Yeah.
this handle from
Oh,
you?
please just give me the handle. Nothing, nothing. It's
Darn.
not even an active account. Oh, I've messaged Instagram. Oh, it's a thing. Um,
One day you will
so
get it. I am putting that
I
intention
hope
out.
so.
It's going to be yours soon.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. So Floral Design Singular by Allison,
Mhm.
Allison, is my Instagram. And then alternatively, the website is www.floraldesigns with an S. Don't even get me
So
started. By
confusing.
Allison. I don't know.com. So yes, those are like my main spots, where I people engage with me. Yeah, right now, it seems like as we come out of lockdown and get into our reopening plan, the wedding season will be ramping back up in some capacity, which is super
Yeah.
exciting.
Hmm.
Some things won't have to be postponed this year, which is really lovely for all the clients who have been so patient, and have had to reschedule their day multiple times. And yeah, I do still offer everyday florals weekly, which you can like purchase through the website. And then I've got all the dried stuff on there. And yeah, I do a lot of, or try to do a lot of gardening, and I try to grow some of my own stuff
Cool.
during the season. So like last night, I just planted a huge dahlia garden, like in a plot beside the house. So
Cool.
I have like some gardening content sometimes on the page, and yeah, it's not just a place where I like promote what I'm selling. It's also usually like I try to like make it like I'm talking to my friends and I'm
Yeah.
showing what I'm up to, and yeah, more of like an experience. So
Cool.
there's always something happening. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll plug all of that in the show notes so that the listeners can just go click through and connect with you. So, thank you so much for sitting down and sharing your story and just all of the wisdom you've accumulated in your 4 years of running your business. And congrats on all the success so far. Like, the challenges of running a business sometimes feel like they're equal to the wins that we experience. So I
Seriously, yes.
totally feel you, but I'm just really grateful that you were open and honest with us. And I loved this conversation, and I'm sure the listeners have as well. So thank you so much, Allison.
No, thank you. And thank you for offering this for listeners and for small businesses as an outlet. It's something that's really needed. And I love what you do. So you should be so proud of what you've created. So thank you.
Thank you. And we'll chat again soon. Maybe next year we can do a catch up.
I love it. I love it.
Awesome.